Live from Schorr Manor Studios, this is Tales from a Small Town Journalist with Matt Schorr.
Hi guys, thanks for checking out this episode of Tales from a Small Town Journalist, the podcast dedicated to all the weird and wonderful stories you are only going to hear about from reporters who work in small communities just like yours. I'm Matt Schorr, and I was one such small town reporter for almost 10 years before I finally hung up my camera and my notepad, and in that time I had some pretty unique experiences, and I got to know a lot of other folks in that field who had also some pretty unique and interesting experience. Before I go any further, I do want to make sure and mention my Kickstarter last month. We were amazingly successful. So I just want to offer up a big thanks to everybody who pledged and supported us. It really meant a lot. I really appreciate it. And we will definitely get your copies of Moby Dick Back from the Deep out to you as soon as we possibly can. This episode, we're going to be talking with Tony Centonze. Tony Centonze is the epitome of freelance reporting. He is a modern day, real life Peter Parker, just without some of the cool perks. Tony and I worked together for a little while when I was still at the Leaf Chronicle, and we've remained in touch ever since then. He still contributes to the Leaf Chronicle, as well as a number of other publications here in Clarksville and other nearby communities and towns. It's pretty amazing the list of credits he has at this point, I think. So he has a really unique perspective on journalism that I simply do not have because I never did freelance. I always worked within a newsroom under, the umbrella of a specific newspaper. So his experience is very different, unique from my own, and it's we've always had good conversations, and this was no exception. But one thing I do want to make sure and mention about this, we recorded this the day after we had the George Floyd protests here in Clarksville the very first night. So there's a little bit of a lapse, in information that you're going to notice because we talk about things that will later kind of get nullified. Like, for instance, we mentioned wondering what would happen if there had been a protest in downtown Clarksville rather than on Wilma Rudolph. But as most of you may well know that there was actually a downtown protest that happened not long after that. It's just that we recorded this in between. So the information was still coming at us. We were still learning about it. Tony was reporting on it and still getting the information as well. But he was right there for that protest, front lines, if you will, getting all the pictures and information as it happened. So that was really fascinating on top of all of his own personal experiences. Tony's got some cool stories to tell. So let's not waste any more time. Let's turn things over, kick things off with my interview with Tony Centonze. Okay, I would like to welcome Tony Centonze, freelance reporter, to the Tales from a Small Town Journalist for this episode. I'm not going to even begin to list the number of places you have probably worked at this point. I'm going to leave that arduous task to you, Tony. But first off, Tony, how are you doing?
Doing great. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm a little nervous about this. I don't have a lot of funny stories, but I've got some interesting ones for sure.
That's perfect. That's what we need. Well, let's start with, we touched a little bit on this before we got started with the show, about how you got into this crazy gig called journalism. How did that come about?
Well, I started not making money in journalism about 10 years ago.
Good choice of words.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I've always enjoyed writing and taking pictures. It was always a hobby. And I was traveling around Europe in 2009 after my divorce. And I was taking a lot of pictures and journaling everything, and I thought, man, I would really love to do this. I wanted to do something creative. I've been in the restaurant business my whole life, which is a creative outlet. I enjoyed it very much, but I was ready for something new and different. And I notification from them that there was an opening and I could get back into the club. I had dropped out for about a year or two. And so I was excited about that. And when I got back in the club. Greg and I really rekindled our friendship. And then at some point, I told him, I said, if there's ever a chance that you guys need a stringer, if you need somebody to just take pictures, I would love to do that. And so one day, I guess it was about later in 2009, he contacted me and said, bring in some pictures, bring a portfolio, a little bit about yourself, and come meet my editor, Richard Stevens, I think it was at the time. And so I did. I went in and didn't hear anything for weeks. I thought, okay, maybe I didn't get hired. Maybe they didn't want me to do this. And suddenly I got a call from Maria McClure, and she gave me an assignment. And I said, okay. She gave me all the details. I was really excited. And I said, that's great. I'm really excited. I can't wait to do it. And as soon as I got off the phone with her, I called Greg and said, Greg, tell me what to do. I have no idea how to do this. So Greg gave me a few pointers. He said, if you think you're close enough for the shot, get closer. Fill the frame. All the basic things about how to take a good picture in a situation. And that was my first assignment. And that was in late 2009 or early 2010, I think.
And the rest is history?
No, the rest is convoluted, but
I know you've contributed to the Leaf Chronicle, to the Clarksville Living magazine, and a handful of other things as well at this point. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, VIP magazine. I do a lot for them. Clarksville Living. I still do some shoots for the Leaf Chronicle. I did one last night. And I also work for some other good newspapers. So I go as far as Cadiz, Kentucky, and Paris, Tennessee, and all the way up to Nashville, Gallatin, Hendersonville. So I work all over the area, and I love it.
So you are the epitome of freelancing right now.
I am. Yeah, I'm billing like 3 or 4 different sources every month. Well, I was until the pandemic hit. And that was interesting. In March, March around the 10th or 11th, I was still doing jobs, and things were starting to come out about what was going on with the pandemic. And I was thinking, I wonder how this is going to affect me. And that week, suddenly that weekend, everything on my schedule canceled. And I was like, oh.
Ouch.
I guess, that's how it's going to affect me. So I don't think I did any jobs for a period of about 8 weeks or 10 weeks. Since March, whatever that is at this point. Since March 15th.
Okay, so that was one thing I was going to check in on with you about how this COVID-19 has impacted you. It sounds like it's hit you pretty significantly.
Yeah, I lost 95% of my work. Because what I do mainly is cover events.
Right.
And everything stopped. So it was kind of sad. I mean, and I'm okay financially, it wasn't a problem. But after about 5 or 6 weeks, I started thinking, wow, this might be a problem.
How bad?
But now things are starting to come back, and that's good. I did one job in Nashville last week. I did one job in Clarksville this week. I've done a couple of things for VIP. And so it's slowly starting to come back now.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Provided, of course, it's coming back safely.
Well, and one of the first jobs I did, I rolled out with my mask and, the idea of proper social distancing and everything, and I get out there, and there are about 100 people in a little tiny business.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
It was just like a week ago.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and it struck me, and I'm the only one there with a mask.
Yeah, I've driven past a few gatherings, outdoor gatherings at restaurants and other places, and I see people just shoulder to shoulder at tables, and no masks. And I look at Amanda, my wife, and it's like, well, that's kind of stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not afraid of this thing, and I think if I got it, I'd probably be okay. I'm in really good health, I believe, knock on wood. But still, you gotta use some common sense and not push, not challenge the gods here.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Just use some common sense. Why challenge something that you don't have to challenge when it's so easy to be safe?
Because, to what extent you believe this is real or not real, or it is real, how bad it is the question. I don't think we really know. We keep getting contradictory reports on that, but why take a chance?
Yeah, actually, if anything, the numbers we're seeing are probably underreported, because how many people are just not getting tested because they're not showing any symptoms, so they're just staying home. I mean, for all I know, I could be a carrier right now. I have not been tested once, but I've never had any symptoms. None of us have, so we're just staying in and playing it safe. And yeah, for all we know, at some point in the middle of this, we might have had it.
Well, I talked to a guy last week, and he said that he's convinced that he had it. He runs a limo service in Nashville, and he says he got so sick back in November. It was like nothing he'd ever experienced before. He couldn't breathe. It was really, he was out for like a week or 10 days apparently, or some period of time, and so he'd never felt anything like it. He's convinced that was this.
It could be. He could be right. And I've talked to a couple of people who said that they were deathly ill at some point, about 5 or 6 months ago, and they never got tested for it because they didn't know about it. And they said, it might have been it. We don't know. You're right.
That's the thing, and getting into journalism a little bit, touching on this, I feel like people are so adamant about, believe the CDC, or believe this source, or this whatever. And right now, the way that the information is coming out, I think we need to kind of withhold judgment on what we believe until we get more information.
Yeah, I think the important caveat that I would personally make when it comes to the CDC and others is like who do you trust to at least be trying to provide accurate information? And in that sense, I feel like the CDC is trustworthy. When it comes to an old friend of mine from high school posting that he knows what's going on, everything is all a front, and it's this big conspiracy theory, I'm probably going to defer to the CDC's reports over that guy.
Well, that would be a good use of common sense. So there you go. That's what it is.
Exactly. It all comes full circle to what you said.
Yep. Going back to the beginning now, when I got into this, I remember I was out, there was a big snow, I guess the winter of 2009, 2010. And I was out with my camera taking pictures, and my dad came down. He's actually passed away a couple years ago, but he came down and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm not taking pictures." He said, "You are never going to make any money with the camera." And I said, "Well, you never know." And it was about a week later that I got that call from Greg. And in the beginning, I was making like $25 for a couple of pictures and $40 for a gallery. And so, there were months where my income was, $60.
A little bit higher now, I hope.
Yeah, it's slightly.
I won't ask for any dollar figures, though.
Well, actually, I ended up going full time for the Leaf Chronicle 4 or 5 years ago, and I think the reason for that was 1 month Richard Stevens sent me out on 55 assignments.
Wow. So at this point, you are almost kind of like the real life version of Peter Parker, but without the spider sense.
That would be great.
Or the web shooters.
Yeah, all the good stuff. I'm missing all the good stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah, all the downside, none of the upside.
Yep. The thing is, I love it, and I was telling a friend yesterday. She's a photographer, and I told her what I was doing, and she said, "Is it fun? Is it exciting?" And I said, "Yeah, it really is." I was covering the protests here in Clarksville over the police brutality and the death of George Floyd, and it was interesting and exciting, and it made me a little nervous to be there. And there were a lot of people, and there was a lot of anger, and a lot of emotion. But just to be there and be capturing that, I really enjoyed that aspect of what I did.
Yeah, there's because I watched that via a live stream by a lady by the name of Treva. I'm sure I'm saying this wrong. Treva Gordon. She was actually referenced in the article in the Leaf Chronicle about all this. And I remember thinking that while watching it, especially when I saw the mayor show up, which to me was really amazing. The mayor showed up along with some city council members, and I believe a state representative was there as well. And they just started talking. They said, "Look, we're listening. Talk to us." And I remember thinking, I'm witnessing something kind of historic right here. This is a pretty important moment. And journalists, in this case you, I think they say they're always on the forefront of history, and you were right there for that.
I was, and I was able to get a couple of good shots of Joe Pitts, Mayor Pitts, in the midst of that. And I have to admit, I've always liked Joe. I'm a fan of his, and I think he's a really good person with a really good heart, trying to do the best in any situation. And I think he's great for Clarksville, and I think it really showed last night in the way he approached And one guy said, what are you going to do if something like this happens in Clarksville? How are you going to handle it? He said, first of all, we're going to do everything we can to make sure nothing like this ever does. We can always do our best. But he said, if something like this happens in Clarksville, you can hold me to account. We will do the right thing. And the guy said, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make you accountable for this. That's all I'm asking. Just believe me when I say we will do everything we can to do the right thing. And, you're right. I haven't seen any other mayor on the front lines like he was. And it's really impressive. We're very lucky to have him and Cindy in charge here.
Yeah, I was kind of amazed. I've seen other accounts where police joined in or showed some solidarity, but Clarksville, and I'm not going to say there aren't other communities where this happened, I just haven't seen it. Clarksville was the first and so far only community I've seen where the mayor, city council members, and the state representative came in and they said, you talk, we're here to listen. Tell us what's happening.
Well, I got there at 5 o'clock yesterday, 4:45, and when Chris Smith, editor of Leaf Chronicle, sent me out, he said, I don't know how big this is going to be. It might be a dozen people. I don't know. Well, I got there at 4:45, and already there was a line stretching on the sidewalk of Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, which that group chose Wilma Rudolph Boulevard because, she's one of the most famous African-American citizens of this town.
The visibility and traffic on that road didn't hurt either, I'm sure.
Yeah, tons of traffic, and it was really busy. But when I got there, it was already lining up. I would say about 5:45. The line stretched basically shoulder to shoulder from the red light at Cheddar's all the way down past Old Chicago Pizza.
I actually saw that from a distance. One of the things we do a lot of in the midst of this pandemic, we've done this almost every day. We'll just get out and drive. It's our way of escaping cabin fever. And it was just me and my son Callum driving around. It just happened to be late. And I got the notice that there was a protest going on in Wilma Rudolph, and I was coming around toward the back end of the mall, the Governor's Square Mall, and I saw just this sea of blue lights. I couldn't tell how many police cars there were, but I could tell it covered at least one or two city blocks. And I didn't know what was going on at the time, and so all I could think about is all the bad ones that are going on. Like Nashville had some major problems with the protests there, and of course Louisville, Minneapolis, I think even St. Louis, just to name a few. And I said, oh my gosh, I have my 4-year-old son in the car with me. He's in his pajamas. I'm going to get out of this situation just in case it turns bad. And when I got home, I met up with my wife, and she had called up the live stream that I mentioned earlier from Trevor Gordon, and we just sat and watched it, and we just kind of couldn't take our eyes off of it.
Well, early on, everybody was on the sidewalk, and there were no police officers there. And then somewhere around 7 o'clock or so, as the sun started to go down, 7:30, the sun started to go down, they decided, well, a lot of people left. It was only supposed to last for an hour, but a lot of people started leaving, and then a more concentrated group, maybe 100 or so, decided they were going to move it out into the street. And so they blocked off half the street, the northbound lanes. And that's when all the police officers had to come in and start blocking off the road to make it safe for them to do that.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about doing things like that. Well, you're already on the street. You're rather visible with the sidewalk there. Is it really necessary to disrupt traffic? Now, at the same time, though, would they have gotten with Mayor Pitts and everybody else who showed up if they hadn't taken that extra step? So that's why I'm not totally sure how I feel about it.
I agree. I don't like the idea that they block traffic because I think that can lead to other problems.
Correct. Yes. There's also safety issues. Yeah.
But you're right. Would Mayor Pitts come out otherwise? And I don't know the answer to that. But this thing kept dragging on. I left and came back, and then left again at 10 o'clock. And then Chris called and said, hey, Mayor Pitts just showed up. So I went back again. So I was out there 3 different times last night. But, it was interesting. And I'm just glad that we had a peaceful protest. And a lot of the protesters were saying that. They were saying, actually, Treva Gordon herself did a great job. At one point, one of the instigators was really trying to start something up.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was no small task for everybody that organized that, because there's some tense feelings right now, and it's understandable. There's some definite righteous anger that this all comes from.
They kept asking the mayor. They're like, don't you think it was just basically the man was murdered in the street? And I don't know. I didn't hear the mayor's response, but I mean, I think that most people would say, yeah, he was. He was murdered in the street. There's no. I don't know anybody who come out in defense of what happened to Mr. Floyd.
Yeah.
But the sad thing is, and a lot of people are making this point on Facebook, which is, I put up a meme the other day and said, I know we've been quarantined for 11 years, but doesn't Facebook seem ridiculous at this point? Isn't it more stupid than usual? It's just so hard to watch, but anyway, I lost where I was going, but there's so much going on, and it's so hard to keep up with, and it brings you down. It brings you down, and now everybody has a voice, and not everybody really deserves a voice. I mean in a bad way. But there's a famous saying about your stupidity is not equal to my intelligence, or something along those lines. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's not all opinions are equal. Everyone has the equal right to express opinion, but in the end, they're not all equal. That's for sure.
I think that's an important way to put it. Yeah, everyone has the equal right to express their opinion, but some opinions are, in specific instances, more valuable than others. Opinions out there who are just looking to incite people and cause problems and cause fights. I don't think that they have as much value as somebody who is trying to be rational and comprehensive. Say, look, here's all the data, here's all the facts, here's what happened. Now let's decide how to deal with this. To me, that opinion is far more valuable.
So the tragedy of what's happening right now is Mr. Floyd's lost him, and he seemed like a good man and an innocent man in the situation for the most part. It's being overshadowed now by all the looting and vandalism and fires and destruction. And that's just, that makes no sense to me. And then somebody put up, and I think this was a person in leadership, put up a Facebook post just in the last day or two that said, you have to understand this is their way of expressing themselves, and they were basically saying the looting and all the destruction and all that is just part of them having their voice and being able to speak about what's promised. And someone else in the comments under that were like, right, we have to let people do this. This is what makes our community better, or something to that effect. And I'm just following this and pulling my hair out going, how can just ridiculous destruction of all this property and all this money that's going to be spent to rebuild these things and fix these things, and how does that in any way benefit anyone? How does that honor a man who passed away, wrongly? It doesn't make any sense to me. So it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I understand that frustration. I think what is getting lost there, I think it's important when dealing with this, just like with any sort of situation where there is tension and anger and whatever, don't just write off the people that are looting and doing all this as they're just bad people, they're thugs, they just need to be rounded up and put in jail. It's like, stop and consider why they're doing this, what led to this, and no, that's not going to solve what happened, but if you learn from it, there's a chance that you can take steps and create an environment where people won't feel pushed into doing that. I know that the frustration on one hand that people claim that leads to that is the frustration of all the peaceful protests that have happened in the past that didn't accomplish anything. It's like, well, you're not listening to us when we're peaceful, so okay, why don't we just take the next step? Not the best decision, but I think it's important to know what leads to it and why.
Yeah, that's true. And then the converse of that is someone posted up, and my mother actually commented on this. She said you have a group of people who feel like they're marginalized and feel like people are fearful of them without reason, and then they go out and loot and burn and hurt people and cause damage. How does that in any way help their cause?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to also note that it's not, we've been starting to learn, they're not necessarily the ones that are going out and looting. It's people from outside the communities coming in, and yeah, because they've got nothing to lose, come in and just trash the place and then go back to their neighborhoods, and then the people who do live there, they're left to pick up the pieces.
That's a distinction that has to be made, I think, lump everybody into one group, and we
Oh,
punch
yeah.
it monothetically, you know. And the bottom line is, right, there are of 1,000 protesters, 900 of them have good intentions, and then there's a handful, there's a small percentage, 5-10% that are there for different reasons. They're there to cause trouble. They're there to do damage. And so you have to realize that you can't condemn the whole group. You have to appreciate the group for the most part has good intentions. It's just the bad actors within that group, and you have to wonder what their motives are.
Yeah, who knows? It's hard to say. Could be one of those like I believe it was on The Dark Knight where Alfred told Batman, "Some men just want to watch the world burn."
Yeah, it's good reference.
Yeah, Alfred knew a thing or two. Well, let's get into some of your own personal experiences, though, because working for so many different publications at this point in your career, that there are bound to be some interesting things that have happened to you along the way.
Well, there have been a few. I mean, you know, for the most part, the assignments go off really well. They say, you've been in this business, they say, this is happening at this address at this time. You go out there, you go click, you get a couple of quotes, and then you're done. You know, it just works. But I run into a few situations. One time, I pitched this idea to Jake Lowry when he was my editor. This guy had this big charity event coming up, and it was tied to a big famous charity that everybody supports with a lot of money. And so I said, I think I'm going to talk to him about this and see what's happening. And I got out there and started the conversation. Actually, I think I had to phone him. I don't think I was able to meet him. But we started the conversation, and pretty quickly it started to unravel. The whole thing just started to sound like a scam. Like, he was doing something, he was doing it in the name of this charity, but I was not really sure about where the money was going to go and how he was going to. It just stopped making sense altogether, so I ended up not writing that story. But, it's funny, you see how different people look at the newspaper. And some people are very respectful of it and get very excited about the possibility of it. Some of them just blow it off. You know, you say I'm with the newspaper and they're like, oh, whatever. Some people are like, oh my God, he's with the newspaper. Hey, everybody. And so it's interesting to see that even though the newspapers kind of suffered over the last 10 or 15 years, that it still gets a lot of respect in most communities. But everybody thinks they've got a great story, and a lot of people just don't. It's just, you get sent out to something, and you're told, oh, this is going to be a big deal. At our church, it's going to be a big deal. There's going to be 100 people there. We're expecting this and that. And you get out there, and there's like 5 people there. And, it's just not what it was advertised to be at all. And so, and you have to you have to scramble at times like that. You have to try to make it look like something. You have to try to, make it look legitimate and sound legitimate, but it's really not as advertised. And that's a fine line, and I think that's the big problem in journalism right now is sometimes people do a really good job of making something look big that's not big, and vice versa.
True.
But,
yeah.
So, one of the worst assignments I ever got was I was told about a woman who had an insurance claim, and she couldn't get any traction with her insurance claim, and they thought there was a story there. And I walked into a nightmare. This house was like an episode of Hoarders. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table with them, just in a little space that I was able to carve out. And it's so nasty. So nasty. There are roaches crawling around. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And they're trying to tell me why they think they've got a big case against their insurance company and everybody. And I know enough about things to know they don't have a case at all. And so then they took me downstairs. Basically what happened was a pipe had run back into the house. Like a water pipe that's supposed to go, take water out of the house. It reversed and water went back into the house and flooded the basement. Well, since they're hoarders, there were piles of clothing. There were boxes. And just, it was, oh my God, it was horrible. And I couldn't put a story together out of that.
Yeah.
But, what am I going to say? They don't have a case. And, their own lifestyle
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that I've run up on. It's everybody, for the most part, everybody's easy to work with and easy to deal with, and it's fun. And it's quick in and out. 30 minutes or an hour, you're in, you got everything you need. But every once in a while, you run into these situations. There's one lady here in town that promotes these things all the time, and you get out there and there's just nothing going on. And that reminds me of Jimmy Terry. Remember Jimmy Terry?
Not off the top of my head. I feel bad now. The name's familiar.
Yeah, Pastor Jimmy Terry.
Yes. There we go.
Local hero, passed away a couple years ago. And Richard Stevens told me one time, he said, I'm going to send you out to talk to Pastor Terry about what he's got going on. And I said, well, we've done a lot with him lately. He said, Pastor Terry's just one of those guys you can't resist. When he asks you to do something, you just do it. And he was exactly right, because Pastor Terry was so positive and such a hero in his community that he'd call up and say, hey, I'm going to do something. I need some coverage. And, people are like jumping and making stuff happen to get him the coverage, because he was just that kind of person and that kind of personality. But I was thinking about that the other day. Just a good man that always had something going on, was always doing something for the community. And Richard and others have felt just an obligation that if he's doing something, you need to tell everybody about it. So, well, again, that's not funny.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I'm not running into these situations where I walk in on a naked woman or or something crazy happening, or in the middle of a bad situation for the most part. Things have gone really smoothly in the 10 years I've been doing this, and I've covered hundreds of stories. So
hundreds of stories for dozens of people, right?
Yeah, but I absolutely love doing it. I just love. I'm an introvert and an extrovert. But when I first started at the newspaper full time, I said, well, I usually work in my underwear, and they're like, well, you can't do that here at the office.
That must have been one heck of a job interview.
Yeah, well, they knew me pretty well, but for the most part, I was used to for 4 or 5 years working from my house, and so I'd go out and cover the event, and then I'd come home and I'd work from my house, and I'd remotely send everything in, and I loved doing that. And so the period of time I was full time at the Leaf Chronicle, I had to get up every day and go to the office, and I felt like it was kind of counterproductive. I was spending a lot of time being at the office, being in meetings, and not getting things done. I felt like I was better at getting work done when I wasn't sitting in the office. So
that makes sense. I can see that, especially if you're used to freelancing and just constantly being out and on the move.
Yep. But I love going out to the events, and I know a lot of people, and I'm happy to see them and talk to them and do my thing, but I cannot wait to get back home.
Yeah, I was going to say, journalism does not allow for very many introverts.
No, you're forced to be out there. But I've never really come into any uncomfortable situations. I've never really been challenged or threatened or anything like that. So that's good.
Yeah, that's very good. Especially when you end up in tense situations like protests and whatnot.
Yeah, and I was nervous. I was nervous last night because there were a couple of guys, and you could see them. You could tell the ones. They kept walking off and plotting, and then they'd come back in, and they were circling the group in a way that it just felt like something was going on. Something was happening there. They were trying to, incite something. But we live in a good town.
We really do. And I thought the protest here, just everything about how it played out, really proved that. Clarksville isn't perfect. There's crime here, there are problems here, and I know that if we just stopped and took a look at various things that this town deals with, we can create a long list of stuff that needs to be addressed. But I really thought that when I watched the live stream of that protest, I thought it really reflected well on our town.
Mm-hmm. But I talked to one of the organizers last night a few times, and I told her that, well, I don't know how involved she was in organizing it. She's part of that group that put it on. But I told her, if they had held that downtown, it might have been a different story.
Possible.
But if all those people had gathered in the heart of downtown Clarksville, there might have been some broken windows and some problems.
Who knows? Yeah.
I mean, I just had a feeling that where they did it was kind of perfect, and that it gave them a way of being contained away from, storefronts and things like that. So, and I shouldn't be so cynical. Maybe nothing would happen.
Might not have. Let's not jump to that. But you are right. The setting they used was pretty ideal in that sense because, if anybody did try, they would have to make a sprint because it's such an open area. They'd have to really be sprinting towards some place to try to start looting it, and anybody who spotted them could potentially shut it down real quick.
Yep. I do have an interesting point to make about taking pictures, though.
All right, I think we've got quite a bit, so we'll end it on that one. That'd be a good high note to wrap things up on, right?
Well, I was going to say, when it comes to pictures, though, and I shouldn't give you too many specifics because it would give away who the person is, but we had a person in leadership here in Clarksville for many years that was the most non-photogenic person I've ever met.
Okay, no more details.
Yeah. I would go to an event, and this person, and I'm being non-gender specific.
Yeah, gender neutral. Let's keep this as ambiguous as we can.
This person would be at the podium speaking, and I would go click, 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 click like 100 times, and just know that I wasn't getting anything that I could use. And then I would sit down at the computer, and I'd be pulling them up, and it'd be, nope. And it was so hard to get a picture of this person. Other people, though, have the opposite problem. You could drop the camera and it would take a perfect picture of them. But I was at a spelling bee one night, and the lighting was a little tricky, but not bad. And the kids came up. It starts off with like 50 kids or whatever. And the first kid came up, and it was one shot done. I just kept everyone out. And this one little girl came up, and every time I took a picture of her, I'd go click, click, click. It wouldn't work. And as the night went on, she's hanging in there. She's still coming up. I'm getting more and more chances. I'm not getting a picture of it. I finally got one, and she ended up being the person who won the spelling bee. And it wasn't her. It was just the lighting, just something about her skin tone and the lighting. And a lot of people don't realize when you're in a situation where you've only got a few seconds or a minute to get a picture, lots of little things make a difference. Light, shadows, skin tone,
Oh, I totally get that. I've had to take pictures of people giving speeches and just talking, and nobody really stops to think about how challenging that can be because when people moving their mouths in a certain way, you snap that photograph, within 1/100th of a second of while they're speaking. When you freeze that where they are, a completely photogenic person suddenly may not be so photogenic.
Right, their mouth is twisted a certain way, or their eyes are halfway closed, they look drunk.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
I've run into that so many times where I have to take like 20, 30 pictures of this one single moment before I finally get something where I feel like, okay, they look pretty normal and presentable here.
So I was out, another incident that did happen with the photography side of things. I was covering a food truck event a couple of years ago, and there was I was taking pictures of people, from a distance, didn't need names or anything. And I took a picture of this family. It was a man, a woman, 2 kids, I think. So I got a picture of him. Well, the man, as I walk by, the man calls me out and says, "Hey, did you take my picture?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You can't take my picture." He said, you don't have any right to take my picture when I'm out here in public doing my thing. Unless without my permission, you don't have any right. And I'm just looking at him, and I said, you know what? I'll gladly delete the picture. Here, watch. And I deleted it off the camera, and I said, but just so you know, when you're in public, you have no expectation of privacy. I can take as many pictures of you as I want. You don't have to give me permission for that. And somebody who was sitting next to us said, "That's true. I studied that in school. That's true." And I said, if you don't want your picture taken, just say so. But, I kind of know what I'm doing. Anyway, so then he calmed down and he started talking, and it turns out the wife and kids that he was with weren't his wife and kids. So that kind of explained why he was having a problem there.
Oh, that's good.
I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I think that is a perfect note to end on. I don't see how we can top that story.
All right. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, I appreciate it again. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure. It's good to talk to you.
All right, right. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me. It was a pleasure to get a chance to catch up, and it was great to have a chance to put a perspective on community journalism that I just haven't had a chance to put out there yet. I've talked with journalists in radio, in television, and of course in print. So naturally, I'm going to go there. But I haven't had a chance to talk to somebody who is truly doing this from a freelance perspective, a real life Peter Parker, just like we said a couple of times, but without the cool benefits. I'll apologize to anyone out there who might be kind of sick of hearing about the ongoing pandemic and the protests, but those things are relevant. They're happening. They're still happening, and they're still very, very important. So, in a podcast that's dedicated to journalism, those things are just going to come up. That's just the way it's going to be. So, uh, sorry, not sorry. Regarding the pandemic, I do want to say, for whatever it's worth, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So please make sure you're getting your information from reputable sources. Of course, I'm going to tell you that those are medical professionals, health departments, the CDC, doctors, hospitals, clinicians. Those are the people that are on the front lines with this thing that know what it does, how to prevent it, and how to combat it. They are not coming at this with a political agenda or personal agenda or anything like that. Their first priority is making sure that people are healthy and well. Those are the people that are going to be putting out a good faith effort to get information to you as accurately as they possibly can. Those are the people that you really do need to trust. But as we bring this episode to a close, I will let you know the various ways that you can follow this show and, of course, me online. First and foremost is the website. The podcast is on my own personal website, www.mattschorr.net. It just made the most sense to put it over there. You can also follow this website on Twitter that we finally set up a little while back. It's at Journalist Tales. And if you want to follow us on Facebook, we do have a presence there for Schorr Manor Studios. It's facebook.com/Schorr Manor. You can also follow me on Twitter at @TheMattSchorr and on Instagram at The Schorr. And of course, if you wanted to shoot me an email, what is now the old-fashioned way, you can shoot me an email at mattschorr@hotmail.com. And of course, like I mentioned before, there is my website, mattschorr.net. So thank you for tuning in to yet another episode. Thank you for listening to Tony and I jabber on about this crazy world of journalism and our crazy little perspectives on it. And of course, be sure to support your local journalists if you happen to know any, be it in radio, television, newspapers, podcasting. Be sure to show them some love. They could definitely use it. They don't hear what a good job they're doing nearly enough. So please, if you know them, let them know. They'll definitely appreciate it. So, coming to a close, finally and at long last, let me just say again, as I always do, keep reading and keep listening. Thanks.